Well, here is a frightening discovery. By the year 2100, our planet will be hotter than it's been before the last ice age, more than 130,000 years ago. That's less than 90 years from now. And according to scientists from Harvard and Oregon State University who studied the planet's temperature back to the ice age, it's getting hotter, it's happening fast, and we are to blame. They say the climate's gone from one of the coldest in the last 11,000 years to one of its hottest in just a century. And that's why the planet should actually be getting cooler. Marshall Shepard is president of the American Meteorological Society, or the AMS. You've probably heard of it. And you didn't work on this study, but you're certainly an expert on this. This study, you've said, may be a game changer. Why is that?
Yeah, possibly so. We have to certainly look at it from a scientific perspective, but it's really important for people to know that what it basically says is that this study goes back to the end of the last ice age. And the last ice age was essentially driving below the speed limit. But when humans started putting the foot on the gas, and pun intended, we started speeding, actually. So we are actually rising at a rate of about 100 years of warming that took thousands of years. So as I say to my students, it's the rate of change that we're seeing that really suggests that humans are part of the cause.
It's important to look back to the last ice age because some critics complain that climate change research has been short-sighted. Is that part of the reason why this is groundbreaking?
Yeah, it's really important. I often have people come up to me and say, Dr. Shepard, climate changes naturally. Well, of course it does, but what we know is that some of the changes and the magnitude of those changes take thousands of years. We're seeing warming on the span of decades, tens of years, and much of that has been in the last 20 to 30 years. That certainly suggests that a natural cycle cannot be the only explanation based on this particular study.
And what's alarming is that the study says things should actually be getting cooler, right?
Yeah, if we just consider natural processes alone, based on this study, it would suggest that we would be still in a ramping down or a cooling coming out of that last ice age. Some have even suggested that the human activity may have even thwarted the beginning of another ice age. I'm not quite sure about that, but the point is we went from a dramatic sort of cooling over thousands of years to rapid warming of the same magnitude over tens to hundreds of years.
Let's talk about the practical consequences of this. The study says that by 2100, temperatures could rise from 2 to 11.5 degrees. If temperatures were to rise 11.5 degrees, how do things change for you? How do they change for me? How do they change for all Americans?
Yes, that's a great question. I often get the question, what's the big deal about 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees or even 3 or 4 degrees? Well, if our child gets a fever of 1 to 2 to 3 degrees, our body knows that. Same thing with our climate system. 1 degree, 2 degrees, we're starting to likely see things happening now. 2, 3, even 5 to 10 degrees, that's a planet we don't recognize. I mean, we've certainly been warmer in the past, the natural cycle, but reptiles are roaming around in what are now the poles. It's a planet we don't recognize when we get that warm in terms of our climate, sea level, and other things. So it's really important to look at this within a broader context and hopefully approach it scientifically and not get entrenched on our ideologies on either side.
And Marshall, will certain areas see more of an effect than others?
Yeah, I think there are regional effects. And one of the important things about this study is that it was global. They actually used paleoclimate records from around the globe, marine animals, and looked back at past climate. So we know that there are regional changes, but one of the things we have to worry about is the larger changes in sea level, changes in extreme weather. These are things that scientists are now looking at to try to understand what the impacts are, and it's certainly consistent with what the IPCC had projected.
Over the last year, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration points to the fact that there have been record-breaking extreme events all across the country in all 50 of the states. One, can we draw a causal relationship here? And two, should we be expecting more of this?
Yeah, I think we have to be careful, but the IPCC certainly suggested that certain extreme events would be more frequent or intense. I think the question that we should be asking is not whether extreme events are being caused or affected by climate change, but how much additional risk are we adding to the deck? That we're sort of loading the deck. We're adding an ace to the card deck, and every time you draw an ace, you might get an extreme event. So scientists are starting to think about it in terms of, are we increasing the risk or probability of these types of events?
Marshall Shepard, very interesting. Thanks for breaking this down for us, and I'm sure we'll continue to be exploring this even more.
Absolutely.
This study.
Thank you.